Hello, and thank you again for joining our Level Up series, 3 strategies to building your CEO brand. You are in the right place if you want to learn about how to strengthen your executive brand to attract more customers, quality employees, and even investors. I recognize some of you on this webinar session as either our current or former fundraising companies on Republic. A special thank you for tuning in today. So we are going to talk about personal branding. To help us learn about you, would you drop in the chat how you are doing based on your perception on personal branding? 1, not at all. 5, you're an expert brand builder. Drop it into the chat. Oh, Andrew, you are a 1. You, Mandy, a 3. Joanna, 3. Andrew, hi, Andrew, you are 1. I think I'm a 2. I feel like I know some about personal branding, but I don't have a checklist. I don't have a regular habit of building my personal brand. So yeah, a lot of 2s and 3s, 1s. Well, we are excited you are here. And this is amazing. Thank you for joining. I hope you will find today's material really helpful in building your personal brand. I'm so excited that branding and marketing expert Karen Tiber Leland will be explaining proven strategies to build your executive brand and provide you with tactics you can leverage right away. So thank you again for joining. Thank you also for all of you who have submitted questions beforehand. We received nearly 60 questions, and we are going to try to weave the answers into the presentation, but also Karen will answer them to you individually after the session. So some housekeeping items. You are all on mute. If you have questions or comments, please use the chat or the Q&A section here. And the recording will be available to you after the presentation, about a week or so. And of course, this session is for educational and discussion purposes only, and nothing here should be construed as investment advice. So yes, thank you, and hello again. So I'm Sandra Ford, an operating partner here at Republic. But I come from a traditional finance background. My heart is all about building and growing companies. Our distinguished speaker, Karen Tiber Leland, is the founder of Sterling Marketing Group, a branding and marketing firm that works with clients on building stronger personal, team, and business brands. Her clients have included Apple, LinkedIn, Google, American Express, and Twitter. She is a best-selling author of 9 books and writes regularly for major publications such as Inc. and Entrepreneur.com. Karen has been interviewed by Fox News, Bloomberg, The Today Show, and CNN, has spoken at Harvard, Yale, among many others. Wow, you are in for a treat. So Republic is a fundraising platform. We set up to help companies to drive growth while raising capital, which essentially means acquire users, garner media attention, and even increase sales. Republic is a quickly growing tech-enabled company with 60 employees. On our platform, there are 600,000 members. Yeah, members, users. Andrew is asking what members mean, users, who can potentially invest in your company. And over 200 companies have raised capital on our platform. Now, we know fundraising is difficult, and so our team is set out to support founders with all aspects of the fundraising process. So on the next slide, you may ask, who is a good fit to raise on Republic? Well, our investor base seeks diversification across industries, stages, and technologies, so many companies are a good fit to work with us. Essentially, our investor base are sector agnostic. Some companies that have raised on our platform were from fintech, health tech, ed tech, consumer product companies, blockchain-based enabled companies, food and beverage, and so on. In terms of stage, we are also have a wide range of companies who raise on Republic, anywhere from pre-seed to pre-IPO. And depending on your need and your stage of your company, we would introduce you to the right team. Investors are looking for scalability, competitive advantage, total large addressable market size, and of course, a great founding team. So that is all about Republic. If you have any questions, please reach out to our team at team@republic.co. And today is all about Karen and her educational curricula about CEO branding.
I'm Karen Tiber Leland, the founder of Sterling Marketing Group, and I am so delighted to welcome you to this webinar on 3 steps to building your CEO brand. And the first thing I want to talk to you about today is really, what is a CEO brand? And the reality is that a CEO brand is a version or a subset of personal branding. And really, CEO branding is about leveraging the asset that is you. It's about you being your most authentic leader in a sustainable way and putting that into the world. It's not about coming up with something phony or something that sounds good or some clever language. It's really about who you are at your heart, at your soul, in your depth as a CEO, and bringing that out into the world. And what I want to talk about in this webinar is how can you most effectively do that? And in the work I've done with CEOs all over the world, I've really discovered that there's 3 steps to that. And that's what I want to talk about in today's webinar. One of the things I want to say, though, is right now, particularly where we are, there are more eyeballs than ever looking at you online. Now, part of this is because of the pandemic and everybody's at home, and a lot more people are working from home. So a lot more people are on their screens. So that just by design, there's a lot more people looking at you online in terms of your brand and your CEO brand. But also, I feel that was the trend even pre-COVID. What COVID did was it accelerated that. Our reputations online have become one of the first things that people look at before they do business with our companies. And so right now, you just have to be aware that as a CEO, there's more people than ever looking at you online. This is why I always tell my clients, CEO branding today is not an option. It's not a luxury. It's a necessity. You absolutely have a responsibility as a CEO today to have a CEO brand and to be what's called a social CEO, meaning that you're on social media, you're visible, and you're doing a good job with it. There are about 100 studies that I could quote, but we don't have time for 100 studies. I'm just going to give you some of the top statistics from some studies that have been done on CEO branding and being a social CEO. So the first one is that they did some research, and 70% of people that they interviewed said that a CEO's reputation played an important role in attracting employees to the company and motivating employees to stay. So your role as a CEO, your brand as a CEO, your reputation as a CEO is really critical to not only the quality of employees that come work for you, but to those people staying, to those people remaining a part of your organization. Another study that was done found that 50% of high-performing CEOs have 2 or more social media accounts, right? So if you're a high-performing CEO, the chances are that you will have 2 or more social media accounts. If you're a low-performing CEO, 72% of low-performing CEOs had only 1 social media account or 0 social media accounts, right? And then a third survey that was done found that 48% of a company's reputation could be attributed to the standing of its CEO, right? So almost 50% of your company reputation is really your reputation as the CEO. But this is the one that really blew me away. 87% of global executives consider CEO reputation as a factor in attracting investors. 87%. And I can tell you from the clients I've worked with who are in raises, capital raises, Series A, Series B, Series C, all the way through, I can tell you that those CEOs tell me that the quality of their CEO brand, when they improve it, makes a huge difference, not only in the number of investors that they're attracting, but the quality of investors that they're attracting. So if you are wondering, well, is CEO brand really that important or really matter that much? The answer is absolutely, without qualification, yes. The quality of your CEO brand today is critical to building your business, to attracting investors, and to growing your business and your company. So I think the key is this. This is what I call creating a parallel brand. It's really important to not only be building the brand of your business. You've got your business has a certain brand. It has a certain reputation. It has a certain feel. It has certain language. But at the same time you're building your brand as a business, you need to be building your CEO brand, right? That's, again, what I call a parallel brand. You're going down the same road in parallel, even though they might be on slightly different tracks. Now, what's important is that your CEO brand can't conflict with your business brand. It has to complement your business brand, right? Your CEO brand has to be something that's, as I said before, authentic to you and sustainable over a long period of time. And most importantly, your CEO brand has to be positive and affirming and interesting. It can even be controversial. What it can't be is negative. A negative CEO brand really over time does not sustain that well. There's always exceptions, but in general, that's what I have found to be the case. So the whole goal here is to be creating a parallel CEO brand. When you create a parallel CEO brand, what happens is your business brand plus your parallel CEO brand, they enhance each other. So 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, 1 + 1 = 4. And a great example of this is Tony Hsieh from Zappos, right? Tony Hsieh did a brilliant job of enhancing his CEO brand in parallel with his business brand, so that every time you think of Tony Hsieh, you think of Zappos, and every time you think of Zappos, you think of Tony Hsieh. So that's what we're going for here. Well, then the question, of course, becomes, how do you do that, right? Well, my answer to that, after the 10 years of researching this field and working with hundreds and hundreds of CEOs from both large Fortune 500 companies all the way down to brand new startups, is what I call the marketing mastery pyramid. And really, there's 3 levels to building your thought or your industry leadership and building your CEO brand. And I'm going to go through those levels today. And I'm even going to give you a chance at the end of this session to take a little quiz and assess which level you're at. But here's the bottom line to this. There's these 3 levels. And the first level is designing your CEO brand, right? That's really creating this platform or setting the stage for your CEO brand. And that has to do with the clarity of the brand message, your CEO brand collateral, and the consistency of that message. And then the second level is building your CEO brand through buzz and through brand building. And there's many tactics you can use to do that, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the session. And then if you do all of that consistently and long enough and well enough, you end up at the top of the pyramid, which is where you've really accelerated your CEO brand. And that's where you're seen by the world as an expert or a brand authority or a thought leader or an industry leader. And so the rest of the presentation, I'm going to take you through those 3 stages of CEO branding, and then we'll answer questions at the end. All right, stage number 1, or you are setting the stage for your CEO brand. So the other way I talk about this is as platform development, right? You have to create this very solid foundation or set the stage for your CEO brand in order to make it fly. Because what a lot of people do is they go out there and they start doing PR and they start doing social and they start writing books, but they haven't created the solid foundation. And the problem is, if you don't set the stage and you don't have the solid foundation, then all you're doing is driving people back to something that doesn't convert, right? So the foundation is really critical. And I want to give you one example of this, which is I had a reporter that was interviewing me for a story from a major magazine, major business magazine. And we were talking and I said, what do you look for in people to interview? And she was telling me, and she mentioned a story she was working on. I said, oh, I think I have a really good source for you. And I told her the name of the source, not a client of mine, just somebody I knew about. And she said, you know, it's funny. That person has been recommended to me by a few people, including you. But I went to his website to check him out. And I went to his social media to check him out. And it was very poorly done. And she said, and you know, the truth is he might be a genius in his area, but his website and his social is so poorly done that if I use that person as a source for my story, I'm going to look bad. It's going to make me look bad. So I can't use him. I thought that was fascinating because what she was literally saying is exactly what I say to people, which is if you don't have the stage set for your CEO brand, if you don't have that platform set, then you can do all the promotion you want. But if a producer for a show or a writer or even a potential investor goes back to your platform and it's not together, you risk losing that person. And so what you have is an opportunity gap. You have an opportunity lost, because the key is that you have to be congruent between your CEO brand and what people think you are. Because as soon as you have a gap, that's where you have things that fall between the cracks. So here's one of the things you have to do to get that continuity and to set that stage. You have to have consistent social media as a CEO. That means your social media needs to look the same, sound the same, have the same message, have the same tone, have the same look, have the same feel. You have to be consistent in not only how your social media looks and sounds, but you have to be consistent in your promotion of your social media, in the things you place on your social media, in the content you put on social media, in the quality of your social media. You know, so many CEOs who come to me, they're just kind of helter-skelter with their social media, right? Well, I do it sometimes, sometimes I don't. Sometimes other people do it, sometimes I do. They have no editorial calendar. There's no plan for their social media. So consistent quality social media is one of the keys to setting that stage and setting that foundation. The other key, and I want to say this for everyone on the webinar, if you get nothing else out of this webinar, get this. In the business you're in, where you're trying to raise capital, you're trying to attract investors, your LinkedIn is a major calling card. Your personal LinkedIn, not just your business LinkedIn, your personal CEO LinkedIn is a calling card. And I cannot tell you how many CEOs come to me and their LinkedIns are everything from really horrible to just serviceable or okay. It is really critical to have your LinkedIn in great shape. I will tell you that one of my clients who was in a series raise for capital called me the other day and said, you cannot believe it, but since we redid my LinkedIn, I'm getting investors reaching out to me. They're the right investors. They found me on LinkedIn and they're calling me and saying, wow, your LinkedIn was fabulous. I decided I really needed to be in touch with you. It seems like such a small thing, but getting your LinkedIn in great shape as a CEO is a major, major part of CEO branding, a part of the foundation, right, of CEO branding. So here's 5 good reasons you need to leverage your LinkedIn and really have your LinkedIn together as a CEO. One is that 77% of the members who use the site are going to research you on LinkedIn. So if they're interested in you, they will go look you up on LinkedIn. And if they don't like what they see, they're likely not to contact you. That's that opportunity gap, right? Another statistic, 44%, there's a 44% increase in face-to-face networking effectiveness after people have seen you on LinkedIn. 65% of journalists use information on LinkedIn as research material. So one way to have journalists find you and write about you or write about your company and get free PR is really to have your LinkedIn together. 53% of business-to-business marketers have acquired a customer through their LinkedIn, and 50% of people report that they build new networking relationship with individuals who might influence their customers or might influence investors, potential investors, through LinkedIn. So one of the very first things I will do with a new client is I will redo their LinkedIn if they need it, and most of them do need it. So I just want to show you one little example. So this is one of my clients. His name is Andrew Leone. He is the CEO at a company called Dispatch. They have won a bunch of awards for their company. They're doing incredibly well. They're in the middle of a new capital raise. And this is what Andrew's LinkedIn profile, at least the top of it, I'm not showing you the bottom, but the top of it looked like before we worked together. His picture is fine. Very nice picture, looks good. But one mistake, as you can see, no background. It's very generic. It's just that blue LinkedIn. So this is what we call valuable real estate. He is missing all this valuable real estate to be doing branding. He's missing this huge branding opportunity in this real estate. The other place he's missing branding opportunity is where it says CEO at Dispatch. That's what we call the headliner on LinkedIn. He could and should be using that space to really establish a brand. So this is what his visual look like, what we call above the fold on LinkedIn before. And this is what it looked like after he and I finished, right? So he's got a branded background that gives you an immediate feeling. It's the colors of his company. It says what they do. It gives you a feeling of the brand, right? Over here, all the colors, all the background. And then right here, oops, sorry about that. Right here in this part, we've added all these things. He was a #5 Forbes best startup. CNBC named his company top 100 companies to watch. He's an Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year nominee. All of that information was not being covered, and now it's right there. So immediately as a CEO, you get this feeling for his brand that you didn't get before. Pretty simple, right? Now, I'm not even going to show you what we did with his about and all the stuff below, because it's too much detail to show on a webinar like this, but we rewrote his whole bio so that it also had that same sort of sense of crunch, right? That same sort of sense of branding. So my point is that there are little things that you can do to establish this brand. And again, just imagine if you're an investor and you land on this, right? It's okay. Or you land on this. Ask yourself, which person are you going to be more likely to call based on those two LinkedIn backgrounds? So having that foundation is really critical for your CEO brand. Here's the biggest mistake people make in phase 1, which is this setting the stage and platform development. They don't hire the right help, or they don't hire any help at all. So they just think they can do it all themselves, which usually they can't because they're too busy running their companies, or they give it to their poor marketing director who's already so busy doing the marketing in the company, they don't have time to do that person's CEO brand. So that's the biggest mistake in that first platform development, is not hiring the right help or not hiring any help at all. All right, then you get to phase 2. If you do phase 1 well and you build your platform well, then you're at phase 2, which is brand and buzz building. And this is where you're really ready to go out there and start building your CEO brand. Here's the problem. There's over 40 different tactics you could use to build your CEO brand, or any brand for that matter, right? You could do PR, you could do Facebook, you could get honors and awards, you could do public speaking, you could do a radio show, you could do YouTube, you could do Instagram. There's 40 or more tactics. Well, no one's going to have the money or the time to do all 40 tactics. So the trick becomes, which of those 40 tactics are right for you? And I always tell my clients whenever I'm writing a strategy for them, you at most want to do 3 to 5 tactics, because really you can't handle, and most of us can't handle, managing more than 3 to 5 tactics in building our brand. And there's usually only 3 to 5 that are really the most effective for us. Here's the biggest mistake people make in phase 2. They think that CEO branding is a sprint rather than a marathon. And the reality is that CEO branding, just like all branding, is a marathon. It's not a sprint. The idea is to pick those 3 to 5 strategies that you think are going to work the best for you, based on your talent, based on your time, based on your budget, based on your ability, based on where your market gets their information, based on what's competitive in the space, based on the white space, based on your own SWOT analysis. You know, whenever I start working with a client, I always do a SWOT analysis, because I want to know for that CEO, what's their strength as a CEO? What's their weakness as a CEO? What's their opportunity as a CEO, right? What are the threats to their CEO brand? So that we know, well, what are the strategies that can counterbalance their strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities, and their threats? And then it is a good 6 months to a year to build a full CEO brand. Now, that doesn't mean things don't happen in the meantime. They start happening right away. But if you're really looking to build a solid CEO brand from platform to development to thought leadership, you're looking at 6 months to a year to build a good CEO brand. So it's a marathon, not a sprint. All right, I'm just checking my time. Okay. And then the third thing is thought leadership. You know, if you do all of this long enough, you will end up at the place where you will end up being a thought or an industry leader. Here's the key though. The key is trust. Today, more than ever, the trust that people have in your CEO brand and hence your company, because you are the chief ambassador for your, the chief brand ambassador for your company. The trust that people have in you is pretty much the biggest commodity that you have. Think about just something that happened in the pandemic that I thought was early in the pandemic that I thought was an interesting example of this was when people were applying for PPP loans, and it was meant to be for small or mid-sized companies. And at one point you had Shake Shack, which is a big, franchise of burgers and fries, very delicious, by the way. We have them all over New York. Shake Shack applied and got a PPP loan. And then Ruth's Chris Steakhouse applied and got a PPP loan. Well, there was, just this big uproar because people said, hey, Shake Shack is not a small company. They do not need to be getting a PPP loan. And Ruth's Chris is not a big company. They shouldn't be getting a PPP loan either. And there was a whole, hullabaloo about it. Well, Shake Shack immediately, the CEO of Shake Shack immediately said, you know what? You're right. We apologize. We're withdrawing our application. No problem. Like right away. Okay. That helped really build the brand of that CEO in Shake Shack. Ruth's Chris, on the other hand, silence. Didn't say anything, didn't do anything, started defending themselves. No, it's fine if we want to do that. It's not a problem. In the end, what happened? In the end, under pressure, Ruth's Chris withdrew their PPP application, but they didn't get on it right away, right? They didn't right away say yes. So it's not just a matter of how you respond, it's the time with which you respond today that also makes a difference. And so, the trust that you build as a CEO is based on how you respond to things, how quickly you respond to things, and the stand that you take about things. It used to be that CEOs would say, well, I'm not weighing in on that. That's a public thing or political thing. I'm not weighing in on that. And you can see today from every time you turn on the news that the CEOs stand about things that are happening in society have become part of the brand and become part of the messaging. Now, I'm not taking a side of you should be on this side or that side, or you should be more right, or you should be more left. That's really a personal choice. But my point here is that the trust that you build up with your constituency, the trust that you build up as a CEO brand does today have to do with how you respond, what you respond with, and the timing with which you respond. So there's 3 things you have to do if you want to be a thought or an industry leader as a CEO. And here's number 1. The first thing you have to do is form some new thoughts. So people are constantly calling me and going, hi, I'm a CEO of a startup or of this company or this growing company, and I want to be a thought leader. And my not so joking response to them is, okay, but first you have to have some thoughts. You can't just declare yourself a thought leader. That's really something that happens because other people say you're a thought or an industry leader. The world says you're a thought or an industry leader. Media says you're a thought or an industry leader. Other people in your field say you're a thought or an industry leader. That's really something that gets declared not by you, but by other people. And one of the places that you get there is by forming some new thoughts. So one of the things about CEOs that are thought leaders is they're engaged in research. They research to see what's new. They do surveys and polls. They counter common thinking, right? They just don't go with the usual thinking, they counter it. But bottom line, CEOs that are known for their thought leadership add something new to the field they're in. They add something new to the expertise of the field they're in. They add something new to the domain that they're in, right? They actually come up with something new. Now, that doesn't mean they do all the research themselves or they do the surveys themselves. They might hire a company to do that, but they represent that, right? They're there at that innovative front edge of that kind of leading thinking or adding something new to their field. The second thing people that are CEOs that are thought leaders or industry leaders do is they're a go-to source for their industry. That means they speak at conferences or they speak on webinars. They might speak on, today, it's not live conferences. Today it's, online conferences, right? But they speak at conferences, online or off. They're interviewed by reporters as a representative of their area or their industry, right? They're on radio or TV or podcasts. They basically are a source a go-to source for media. So you know that you've built a really good CEO brand when you've gotten to the place where you're starting to be someone that media call for comments, for feedback, for information. That's why I say it takes 6 months to a year to build a CEO brand, because by the time you get to that place for media, to be a go-to source for media, it can take a while. It doesn't happen overnight. And then the third thing that CEOs who have really strong CEO brands where their thought or industry leaders do is they generate content. Now, some of them write books, some of them write ebooks, some of them write full books that get traditionally produced by publishers. Some of them write short ebooks that they self-publish. Some of them go to a hybrid publisher and do a book through a hybrid publisher. There's all kinds of ways to do this, but they write. They also write blogs. Some of them do just articles, right? Some of them do podcasts. Some of them do webcasts or videos. You don't have to do all the content, but you do have to have a content strategy for yourself as a CEO to build your CEO brand so that you get known for something, so that you get a reputation for something and for some kind of thought leadership. Now, for some people, their thought leadership is what I call cerebral, right? They're known for the quality of their thinking. Like think of someone like Bill Gates, right? He's really known for the quality of what he thinks and what he comes up with idea-wise. Some people are more what I call consequential CEO brands. They're known for what they produce, the results they produce. I think Elon Musk is a great example of that because Elon Musk is someone who he's known for what he creates in the world, whether it's going up in space or creating a new electric car. He's known for those consequences. And then other people are charismatic CEO leaders, right? Their brand or the flavor of their CEO brand is charismatic. Think someone like Richard Branson, right? He's very substantial in what he does, but he's known for his flair, right? Or Tony Robbins. You know, those people are known for their flair. That's the flavor of their CEO brand. And one flavor is not better than the other, by the way. It's just you have to know which flavor is right for you and most authentic to you so that you can build your content around the flavor that works the best for you. Here's the biggest mistake people make in this phase. They go out there and they promote themselves and their CEO brand. They hire a PR firm and they write blogs and they do a podcast and they do all that stuff before their platform is in place. So in the example I gave you earlier with the reporter, if your platform isn't solid, all you're going to do is drive people back to a platform that doesn't convert. You're going to drive investors back to a platform that doesn't convert. You're going to drive potential employees back to a platform that doesn't convert. You're going to drive media and producers back to a platform that doesn't convert. So what was the point of spending all that time and money and energy and putting it out there and building buzz and building brand when there wasn't a platform that was solidly in place? So that's why I say it's really a 3-step process. It's building the platform or setting the stage, same thing. It's building brand and buzz, and then it's moving into thought and industry leadership. So I want to give you all a chance to take a quiz, just a really quick, fast quiz to see where you are in those 3 levels. There's only 8 questions. There's only 5 answers for each. So all you have to do is get a piece of paper and pencil or on your, your phone. You can go ahead and just keep track of the numbers, or you can even add in your head as you're going along. It won't be that much math. All right, question number 1. And I suggest you answer these questions where you are today, not where you hope to be or where you want to be or you think where you'll be, but where you are today. If you're sitting with someone else watching this webinar who's in your same company, don't share. Don't be looking at that person going, no, you gave that a 2. I think you're a 4. What you want to do is you want to answer this just for yourself, and then you can compare afterwards. And then if you get a feeling, the first feeling you get is usually the right answer. And then people talk themselves out of it. So they go, gosh, that feels like a 1, but they don't want it to be a 1. So then what they do is they convince themselves it's a 4. Don't do that. Take your first feeling because that's usually the right one. All right, question number 1. I use social media such as LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. It could be either one of any of those to build my CEO brand awareness. So I use social media such as LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram to build my CEO brand awareness. 1 is for not at all, 2 is for rarely, 3 is for occasionally, 4 is for frequently, and 5 is for regularly and consistently. Just go ahead and give yourself a number, a score. All right, question 2. I proactively engage in media outreach to build my CEO brand to both online and offline outlets such as blogs, radio, magazines, newspaper, and television. Could also be podcasts. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Again, 1 is not at all, 2 is rarely, 3 is occasionally, 4 is frequently, and 5 is regularly and consistently. So I proactively engage in media outreach to build my CEO brand to both online and offline outlets such as blogs, radio, magazines, newspapers, and television. All right, the third question. I can clearly articulate my CEO brand and can speak authentically and easily about my brand attributes, promise, and uniqueness in less than 2 minutes. And that is the key, because if you can't say what your CEO brand is in less than 2 minutes, it's not refined enough. So give yourself a score of 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 according to the scale for question 3. All right, question 4. I speak at webinars, online and industry conferences, association meetings, and other groups that would be interested in my area of expertise to build my CEO brand. Give yourself a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 in answer to that question. And remember, the first answer that usually comes up is usually the right one. All right, question 5. I have identified the core ideas for my CEO brand and my area of expertise and have integrated them into blog posts, articles, and other content. So in other words, have you decided what your core points of view, your thought leadership, your ideas, etc. are, your expertise are for your CEO brand, and are you integrating those regularly into your content? Give yourself a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 for that question. All right, question 6. I have developed substantial content such as blog posts, articles, ebooks, white papers, podcasts, and videos around my area of expertise to build my CEO brand. And it doesn't have to be all of those. You might have just chosen 1 or 2 of those. So give yourself a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 in the answer to that question. All right, question number 7. I have defined the profile and characteristics of my ideal audience or audiences for my CEO brand and develop brand and buzz building outreach that speaks to those audiences. A 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 for that question. All right, and finally, the last question. I update my LinkedIn and other social media as needed so that it is well designed, well written, and fits with my CEO brand. And you want to give yourself a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 for that question. So again, the final question is, I update my LinkedIn and other social media as needed so that it is well designed, well written, and fits with my CEO brand. And I'll give you just a minute to add your scores together. All right, if you scored between 8 to 16 points, you are at phase 1, which is setting the stage. You're at the bottom of the pyramid, nothing wrong with that. Phase 1, setting the stage or building your platform. So here's the key. Don't invest any huge amounts of money in brand building or buzz building or thought leadership until you finish that stage, until you have, an updated LinkedIn, consistent social media, you're able to articulate your brand clearly. Until you've got all of that solidly in place, don't go ahead and start promoting your CEO brand, because you'll just be converting people back to a platform that doesn't really work very well. So that's phase 1. All right, if you scored in phase 2, you're at brand and buzz building, and that's 17 to 30 points. So if you came out at 17 to 30 points, that means you've probably done a pretty good job of setting the stage, you've established a good platform, and now you're starting to build that brand and buzz. What you want to be careful of in this phase is you want to be careful that you don't just kind of willy-nilly, without any strategy, start throwing things at the wall. Right? I'll do Facebook ads. I'll do a podcast. I'll start blogging. I'll write a book. You have to really have a strategy that fits, that's appropriate for your CEO brand, right? So remember I said earlier in the webinar, it's it's 3 to 5 tactics. It's not everything. And you really want to have a strategy going into it that tells you, here's the roadmap I'm going to follow in building that CEO brand. Now, if you scored between 30 and 40 points, congratulations, you're already at thought and industry leadership, which means you've already done a lot of this. You've got a platform in place, you've been building your brand. Here's the key if you scored at this point. You want to become the go-to person or one of the go-to people in your field as a CEO, which means finding out who are the reporters in the space? Who are the bloggers in the space, right? Who are the writers in the space? Where are the places that your best audience consume information? And make sure that you're there getting into those spaces as an expert. Now, that might mean writing a book. For a lot of CEOs, it does. A lot of CEOs I work with come to me because they know they need to write a book and they're ready to do that as their next step, right? It might mean starting a podcast. That might be the way that you do it. It might be doing regular videos. However you do it, it's what's going to propel you into that next level of thought or industry leadership. So hopefully you got a sense of where you are and what level you're at and what's next for you. Here's what I want to leave you with before we take questions. I want to leave you with this wonderful quote that I saw years ago by the famous psychologist Carl Jung. The world will ask you who you are. And if you do not know, the world will tell you. It is so critical in building your CEO brand that you do it by design rather than by default. Because in today's world, if you don't design your CEO brand, I promise you, someone will be designing it for you. All right, the last thing I'll say, and then we'll take questions, is if you have questions for me that don't get answered in this podcast, or you would like to talk to me about your CEO brand, you can always reach me on my website at sterlingmarketinggroup.com, or you can email me at karen@karenleland.com. You can also find me at karenleland.com, same website. You can feel free to call me. Also, if you want some deeper information about this, my book, The Brand Mapping Strategy, is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the usual places. You can go get the book, and it's got lots and lots of information on CEO branding. I just recorded the audio version of the book for the publisher, and it will be out in January. So right now it's the hard book and a Kindle version, and the audio book will be out in January. I also want to let you know that whenever I do a webinar for someone like Republic, who I have a relationship with, I will always offer the people on the webinar the ability to have a short 15 or 20-minute complimentary consultation with me at no charge, where I will give you some initial feedback on your online CEO brand. So the way this works is just go to my website, fill out the contact form, say that you would like the complimentary consultation. There's no charge. You will get scheduled for it. I will go take a look at your brand online. We will have a 20-minute phone conversation, and I will tell you at least one tangible thing that I recommend you do to improve your online CEO brand. Okay. You can also just email me and make that request as well. But if you email me, please make sure to put in the headline, Republic CEO brand session, so that I know and it doesn't get lost in the many thousands of emails that we all get every day. All right, that is it for me for the presentation part of this. We have about 15 minutes to do some Q&A, so I'm going to turn it back over to Sandra from Republic so we can take some questions.
All right, well, Karen, thank you so much for the wealth of information and putting some reality check. For me, at least, I feel that I have a lot of work ahead of me, and I perhaps was even a little optimistic with my score too. So on that note, here's a question coming through our Q&A. Says, what would be your recommendations for really early stage startups who don't have
that kind of budget? Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So if you're a really early stage startup and you don't have that kind of budget, I think one of the things that you want to do is really invest the budget you do have in building the platform. One, it's less expensive to build the platform for your CEO brand than it is to start doing all the buzz and brand building activities or the thought leadership activities. So it doesn't cost a lot of money to have somebody work with you to get your LinkedIn in good shape, right? It doesn't cost a huge amount of money to get a really good headshot done. It doesn't cost a huge amount of money to figure out an editorial calendar for your social media and to post 3 to 5 times a week on your social media. That's not a huge expense, but those things can have a ginormous impact on how you're seen by investors, employees, et cetera. So I think that's always a good place to start if you're an early stage startup.
Of how to get interviews with high quality press.
Oh, Blake, bless you for asking that question. Okay, so here's the first thing to understand, and I'll just be totally truthful. Here's the truth about getting high quality press and interviews these days, particularly on television. Online's a little bit different, but particularly on television, like almost everyone who comes to me goes, I want to be on MSNBC or Fox Business News or CNN or something, or the morning show. Here's the thing. 1, because of COVID. 2, just because of the world we live in, the political climate. I have never, in all the years I've done PR, seen it, and all the PR agents I know say the same thing. We have never seen it be such a difficult situation, because what happens is you'll get someone scheduled. Like I had a client scheduled to be on a big CNBC show, and then something happens politically and the story gets changed, right? Something happens with COVID, the story gets changed. So it's very hard right now to get on big shows unless you have 3 things going for you. And one is you have to have a story that's absolutely, totally connected with what's going on. And I don't mean what's going on like in general, what's going on that day. Sometimes what's going on that hour. So it didn't used to be like that before. So that's one thing, is you have to stay really on top of the news so that as soon as you've got something that's really connected to what's going on, you can start sending stuff out to those producers. Okay, that's one thing. The second thing is you have to have impeccable expertise. So right now, producers, interviewers, they don't want to be dealing with anybody that doesn't have impeccable expertise in what they're saying there is an expert in, which means you have to be able to prove the case already with what you've got in terms of your platform, your brand, your buzz, what you've written. You can't go, well, I know it, but I don't have any proof of it. That just won't fly these days. And then the third thing is you've got to really be on top of it, and you've got to be in the moment pitching those people. So it's very challenging right now. It's a little bit easier to get interviews for online things, but even that's become more difficult. So I always tell my clients, CEO branding is not PR. A lot of people confuse CEO branding with PR. PR is a part of CEO branding, and I think it's important to do PR. But if you're thinking that just doing PR is going to build your CEO brand, you are sorely mistaken. That is not what it's about. It's about having an entire strategy, of which PR is one teeny tiny little piece. And today, getting on those big shows is a really, really hard path to follow, just because of the nature of where media is today. I don't mean to be negative, but I do I want to be realistic with people so that people don't spend a lot of time or money pursuing something and chasing something that isn't really necessarily going to produce the result that they want it to produce.
Getting attention as a CEO, if you have a co-founder, how do you balance building the right brand and not, yes, I guess,
overshadowing them?
Overshadowing.
Yeah. By the way, these are great questions. I just have to say. So really here's the thing. I've worked with people where there were co-CEOs, and there's usually one of 3 circumstances. One CEO is very interested in being like the front and the lead and the CEO brand in the company, and the other one could care less. They just want to do their job and do it well and handle all the back end. So in that situation, there is no conflict, because one person wants to be in front and one person wants to be the back, and it's all great, right? Then I've worked with CEOs where they both want to be in front, and they're really different people. So in that case, what we do is we create 2 parallel brands, one for one CEO and one for the other, both equally, but they have different flavors. They have different feelings. They might even have different strategies, by the way, right? So it's an equal amount of time, an equal amount of effort, an equal amount of money spent on both, but they're pursuing their own unique CEO brands just based on who they are. That's kind of situation number 2. Again, that usually works out really well. The situation where it's more difficult is where you have 2 CEOs and they both want to have a CEO brand, but one person is really more dynamic, really more media friendly, really more articulate, really much more of a thought leader, and the other person wants to be, but they're not. So I think when you have that situation, the way you keep from overshadowing that person is you just have to divide up evenly or fairly, whatever fairly means to the two of you, who's going to do what, so that by default, it just doesn't always fall to the person, the CEO, who's, quote unquote, better at it, who's more natural at it. Because then the other thing is it forces then that other CEO who's maybe not so good with it to develop their skills, to get some media training, to get better at doing it. And those are the solutions that I found in that situation where there's co-CEOs.
And if you have any questions for Republic, reach out to us, team@republic.co. And anybody who knows me personally, you can also reach out to my Republic email, which is sandra@republic.co. If you don't know me, but you would like to get to know me, you can also reach out. So with that—
She's a wonderful person. She is.
Well, Karen, with that, thank you so much for all the nuggets. I think great reality check for a lot of us. And I think we have, or I personally have work to do. Maybe some of you have work to do. Thank you for spending your Thursday evening with us. Really appreciate it. And you all have a great rest of your evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.